Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back once again into the Brotherly Glove podcast. We are two brothers from Philly talking all things Philly sports. We have seen it all, the best and worst of the coaches, players, the teams, all the emotions they've dragged us through over the years. We have been there to see it all. Oh, and as media members, we've covered it for 30 plus years. Johnny, there's too much to talk about. We got to get right into it. We're going to talk about Red Hot Phillies. They have won 9 of their last 12, had a great 5-1 homestand, and they're starting to score some runs finally. Plus, the calendar finally turned to June. That means A.J. Brown must be gone, right? Has to be. Yep. We've been talking about that for 3 months. It has to be time. But first, the Sixers held a press conference, and it was a positive one as they introduced the new president of basketball operations, Mike Gansey. Our first reactions to the 76ers' new executive are what? So, Johnny, I want to turn to you real quick. And just for those of you who don't know enough about us yet, if you're brand new to the pod, we're 17 episodes in, but we took a little break. Maybe we're hitting the top of your algorithm. So if you haven't become too familiar with us, you have one of the great researchers of all time. And it's not just me saying it.
John Fisher, one of the great researchers of all time.
That's right. Tim Kirshen says it on his own podcast. John Fisher, one of the great researchers of all time. That's the kind of information you're going to get here. John, I know we don't have something super insightful on a guy that just got introduced today, but tell the people your initial thoughts on Gansey.
He seems like a good dude. He's been with a good organization that has drafted well, and the guy could ball too. I didn't know much. I didn't remember him. He was first team All Big East in 2006.
Yeah,
2 years at St. Bonaventure, 2 years at West Virginia. He was on the first team with Randy Foye and Alan Ray, I think. So I forgot about him. He played with Kevin Pittsnoggle, and I remember him. And they had some big wins, those West Virginia teams. So that's enough to get me excited. And if he was working under Kobe Altman in Cleveland, and he's got Jameer Nelson by his side, and Bob Myers is around too, I think he's going to be part of a great team. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of championship caliber players and history in that front office now. Bob Myers, as you mentioned, 4 titles with Golden State. They have a championship winning coach. They have a guy who helped build a Cleveland roster from the highs of having LeBron James to the lows of having nobody when he left, and rebuilding them up to the Eastern Conference Finals this past year. You mentioned Jameer Nelson. One of my quick takeaways from the press conference was that he said that it was an important point for him to have Jameer by his side. And I know that there was a lot of talk in the offseason about what is Jameer's role. I feel like a lot of people in Philadelphia get stuck in this. We don't want to just keep running people back who we're used to or names that we're familiar with or whatever. But if you're having someone from the outside look at Jameer Nelson and say, that's someone I want by my side, how can you not feel positive about a guy who maybe you didn't know what his role was and what his importance was? Well, pretty important to the new guy running the show to keep Jameer around. So I thought that was a nice little takeaway for those who are a fan of Nelson for as long as we have been.
For sure.
I think that the funniest takeaway so far is what he has. I guess his Sirianni talking about the planting the flower and growing the seed. He said, "We want fountains, not drains."
Yep.
It repeated that a couple times, but I love that positivity. You can tell, and it kind of adds on to what Bob Myers said in his press conference, right? They want to build a culture here. It's not just, oh, can we turn a decent roster into a championship roster in a short amount of time? They're looking a few years down the road, not 2-3 years down the road. You know, they're talking, when you talk about a culture rebuild, even with a roster that's in a position where they're ready to compete now, you're thinking 5-7 years down the road to build that culture up. So to me, it just makes me feel comfortable. We have executives coming in who are thinking that both in the short and the long term.
Yeah. A culture sounds great. And I mean, a lot of that just, I don't know, a lot of that comes with winning, right? Like,
right.
But I think it's hard the Sixers have been popular enough. They've had big names around, Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse. They've had Embiid all this time. The process, just that on its own. I mean, for the last 15 years, and some of the stuff that's gone wrong, Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, like the Sixers have been relevant in different ways for quite some time, which makes it to me easy to forget sometimes. They haven't been out of the second round of the playoffs since you were 11 years old.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Like
a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost not this century. It was almost the 90s the last time they got out of the second round. Like it had just barely not been the 90s. And I mean, we could sit and say all we want, look at his track record, look at the teams he's been, whatever. The two biggest things ultimately are, what are they going to do? I guess it's the same thing, but then which road do you take? It's all about Joel Embiid. And does he what kind of team can he put around Joel Embiid? Whether that's moving pieces that he mentioned the big four. These are our guys. It's certainly, you say those things, they are their guys right now, but it's really possible that one of those guys is part of the solution. Or is it Embiid? And do you take a big swing and move him and start building it that way? We might not even get that answer this year. It might be that all four guys are here, and that might not be because that's what we're definitely deciding to do. It might just be the smart play right now. So it'll be fun to talk about for a while, but there's no way to know. I mean, we have to let free agency start and the trades start happening to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, you're right. The not getting out of the second round thing really stuck out in one of the comments, and I thought that this was, you and I talked about it briefly before we started recording here, but I thought it was interesting that he didn't give the typical, hey, we have a bunch of superstars and we see the potential. He said, we got swept in the second round. This is not a championship caliber roster, and that's my job, is to turn it into one. And I thought that was kind of some ownership right out of the gate for a guy who just came from a franchise rather that he helped build into what looks like they could be a contender for years to come. One thing, and I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but one thing I wanted to ask you, because it kind of stood out, and it was a question that he wasn't able to actually answer by NBA rules, but I thought it was a great question from a reporter. They talked about the culture and how they want the fountains, not the drains, and the fountains spread the joy to everybody, and the drain kind of sucks the life out of the building. That's the idea. And the Cavs famously this year traded for James Harden. And the reporter said, we're very familiar with James Harden around here. So can you tell us what steps or what thoughts or how involved you were or what went into you feeling like that was a championship caliber move to make? And he's not allowed to talk to him because he doesn't work for the Cavs anymore, and he now works for a new organization. So he kind of said, we love James, and I'm going to leave it at that. That was it. But I thought that it was an interesting take. It's this guy's reputation coming in was that he helped build this roster. And then whether it was him or not, I don't know all the details, and he didn't reveal them, but it is interesting that one of his last moves was bringing in a guy that I would think at this point, most people in NBA circles or talking heads or anybody, whether you're a true analyst or someone who just loves to spit out the hot take, would say that bringing in James Harden doesn't necessarily equate to winning basketball.
Yeah, I mean, friend of the podcast, Jason Starrett, is a Cleveland guy, and I don't think we talked hoops when he came on, but we were joking about they needed something, and they were the number 1 seed last year. What were they, the 4 seed, I think, this year? And they've had a great run with LeBron for a bit, but trying to get back to that level since LeBron is gone. And I joked about enjoy the James Harden era, and he was excited for what Harden could bring, but it kind of, not just a dump on James Harden, but it played out that way. And, during the series when they got eliminated, Jason came back and was like, yeah, that was, I know what you were talking about now. And I think he was also expecting it, but you give it a chance. And for the Sixers, it was a great move at the time. I don't mean they were sold a fake bill of goods or something like that, or he said all the right things and did the opposite. Like, we got to remember where they were at with Ben Simmons, and that turned into James Harden. So for one thing, that's a great move, but it also, whether it's about Harden specifically or not, it feels like we're in this situation now because Daryl Morey didn't have any new moves,
right?
Literally going to get James Harden, but also the same kind of stuff, right? Just pay the big guy on the market when you have the time, and just throw guys out there, and not a lot of roster building. Hard to, at times they seemed good. And I know I've said maybe not all the way top to bottom, this wasn't the best roster, but it sure seemed like the best collection of rotation players that I thought, since Embiid had been there outside of Embiid. And it's funny that there's always seemed to be a Harden connection to the Sixers running on, what do we got, six years now? So let's hope we can cut that cord.
It'll be interesting to see. I do like that he said that he ran the draft. Sixers have the 22nd pick. He's had success with the drafts in Cleveland over the last few years. You just hope, like you said, that these don't turn into another trade for James Harden somehow.
Yeah.
We know what the guy can do on the court. He's one of the greatest talents to ever step on the court, but I don't know if you're building culture, if that's the guy you necessarily want around. So never met the guy. Maybe he's a great dude. I don't know, but history has repeated itself everywhere he's gone. So
time for some new ideas. This is the guy to do it.
Agreed. And one thing on the way, as we transition to a new topic, I think it's interesting is that only because you made me think of it, I want to hit on it real quick. The kind of roster building has changed in the NBA from the last few years, right? It was very much get a big three, pay 3 stars, and figure the rest out. And now it's like, let's pay 1, maybe 2 guys, and let's use those resources to build depth and build a rotation that really works. You know, the season is a grind, and whether you think that guys should be playing 82 games or not, the fact is that guys are not playing as many games as they used to, and you need depth to help yourself. I mean, you saw Maxey just getting exhausted at the end of the season there. So hopefully he can do that, and it's going to start right away. But it seems, as you mentioned, and their focus is the first thing we got to do is we got to get our 4 guys on board and make sure that they're healthy enough to be on the court day in and day out. And obviously, just like their success, that starts with Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Transitioning quickly, let's hop over to the Phillies, John, because I think that the hot streak that they're on is pretty impressive, and we haven't really talked since they have. I mean, they've gone off, right? Have we even had a show since they made the managerial change?
I don't think so. I'm gonna look at our library, but I'm pretty sure we haven't talked since then.
Yeah, and
you and I have talked. We haven't talked on here.
Right. 26th and 11 since changing managers. And I don't think that anybody in the organization would say that it was Rob Thompson's fault, but here they are playing like they did when Rob Thompson took over for Joe Girardi back in 2022. They feel like maybe they cost the guy a job, and it's been working. They have the second best record in baseball over that stretch, carried by the starting pitching a bit, but the offense has shown some signs of life. So Johnny, kind of, what do you feel like we got right? What do you feel like we got wrong so far for this team? Because people were ready to hit the panic button at the end of April, and here we are with one of the better records on an 87-win pace once again.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't feel great about the Phillies. Let me start there. I don't want to just be Mr. Negative, but it's been a nice run. But I think that comes with and this caveat's been made a lot by a lot of people, but it comes with the obvious caveat that they played good teams for 2 weeks and didn't do well. And then they fired the manager, and they had a nice break in their schedule coming up, and they started playing better. Is that because they got a new manager? Probably not, you know?
I was going to say that the biggest change was they didn't play the Cubs and Braves for 2 weeks.
Exactly. So, and right now, so the Phillies are 5 games over. I mean, they're ahead of the Pirates. They're ahead of the Cubs they've got better records than those teams, among others. But they also have a lower run differential than the Padres, who they just destroyed for the last week and a half. So I'm not like, I mean, they have a worse run differential than the Mets and the Red Sox, and they're right in the same neighborhood as the Marlins. So, and yeah, a lot of that comes from stuff that happened before, but that stuff all matters, right? That's part of the puzzle. So I'm not convinced that, like, hey, this is awesome. And I know I've been saying it to you guys, and I saw it floating around a little bit. I'm going to pull up their stat page, but they have 3 regulars with an on-base percentage above 300.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Harper's 368, Marsh's 368, Schwarber's 358. They don't have another guy on the team with an on-base percentage over 300. You know who's next? The catchers. Realmuto is 299, and Garrett Stubbs is 292.
Woo!
Like, and look, we know they're built on pitching, and we've talked about that for years. We talked about it in our off-season previews and all that stuff. And the pitching's been great. Obviously, we'll get to that. But I just want to start that with, like, yeah, they've been playing better, but I do think a lot of it is they played some good teams and didn't do well, and then they've played fewer good teams and some more not as good teams, and they're doing better. Now they also, beat some teams with. You can look at it. I saw something. Several straight series, whatever it is, against winning teams with winning records. Let me see if I can figure it out. But Pittsburgh,
played
Cincinnati, Cleveland, San Diego,
5
Dodgers,
straight.
San Diego White Sox. Yeah. So either 5 straight or 7 straight. Maybe the Reds are under 500. Or I don't know if they were over at the time, but they haven't been the Cubs and the Braves, but they're also playing, after that first stretch, they're playing some winning teams. And I think some of it is they made the Padres look bad, right?
Right.
Like I see talk now about the Padres are going to be buyers, should they be, and all these things, and Manny Machado and what he's doing now, almost 2 months into the season. They made them look bad. It's been good. It's been legitimate, and I don't think the Phillies are lucking into anything. But luck is a word that's going to come up when I talk about what I've seen. But what do you think about this recent stretch? You think it's legitimate? You think it's sustainable, or what do you think is the basis for it?
Well, I think that the key over the last week especially was that the team seemed to pick each other up when it needed it the most, right? The starting pitching carried them for so long. The offense was doing just enough to get them over the hump. You talked about that Padres series, right? Like you play the Padres 6 times in a week and you never see Mason Miller one time. Like you did just enough to keep that guy out of the game from shutting you down. And he's a guy who, if they really needed it in a close situation, would have gone 2 innings. He's a guy who takes the ball and rips it. So, and then you look at this past weekend when the starting pitching and the bullpen struggled a little bit. The offense started to go off as kind of uncharacteristically based on how the season has gone. And say what you want about the White Sox, but this isn't the White Sox team of 2 years ago that was a laughingstock. This isn't the White Sox. They're 4th in the majors coming into this weekend in home runs. Like they're a legit offense, at least at times. And they showed it this weekend against some good Phillies pitching, even with Aaron Nola and Andrew Painter having the starts that they had. They showed it against Luzardo, who had looked really good. Aaron Nola's last 3 starts were really strong, and they did some damage. That's even without their big offseason signing in Murakami. So they did a lot of damage in Philadelphia, and we still walked away with 2 of 3 wins in a series victory. Yeah. To me, it's the balance. It's the picking each other up. And I had the pleasure of talking to a Ryan Kirkering earlier this week down at the ballpark, and he said that the entire group, bullpen, starters, he's like, it's a very tight-knit group. There's no negative energy in there. He said, we are all pulling for each other. He said, so just going out there and treating every day like a new day. If we can hit, great. If we can pitch, great. If we can't hit, oh well. If we can't pitch, oh well. But it's going out there and giving your best every day and knowing that the other guy's going to pick you up. And when you have that attitude going in there every single day, that good things start to happen, right? It doesn't guarantee success, but when you're going out with the mentality, I asked him, that was kind of in response to a question about, do you feel, you guys have been pitching great out of the bullpen, but do you feel added pressure when the offense is going through a skid like it has, where they're just not performing with any sort of consistency? And he was like, not really. He's like, because I know that when we need it, they're going to pick us up, and they know that we're going to do the same.
Okay. Yeah. I don't want to push back on that. Like, and obviously this is part of a bigger conversation. And of course that attitude makes sense, but
right.
I would also bet the teams that aren't playing well sometimes have the same attitude. So
right.
Like it's like, and again, not pushing back on you or him. It sounds cool, but I don't know. I mean, maybe we should get into some of the stuff that we were right or wrong about, or like what you think is either the big thing that, I mean, my thought is let's pick one thing each, and like something you see that is, hey, this is good, this is part of the turnaround, or something that, hey, this is still going to be a struggle. Because I'm looking at what's been different. And like, again, so I mentioned the word luck. I don't want to just say it's all luck, but I also think they weren't as bad as their record in that previous stretch. So batted ball luck is what I'm talking about. Before the managerial change, they were last by a mile in batting average allowed on balls in play. And that doesn't include home runs, right? That's just balls that are hit into the defense. Line drives, fly balls, whatever. You have a chance to make a play on it, turn it into an out. The Phillies were allowing, as a staff, a batting average on balls in play of 354, 31 points higher than any other team. So now it's not just luck if you're first in that or last at that. Like sometimes the quality of your players goes into the quality of at-bats and quality of contact, right? It would be the same thing on the offensive side. But to be that bad. The league average is they're almost 100. They were 70 points higher than the league average and 31 points higher than the next worst team. That doesn't seem like they could still be last, but that doesn't even seem like a sustainable number. So there was a lot of that happening. And the eye test you and I talked about, they're not that strong defensively. And I think we knew that coming in. But I think what we're used to seeing is errors, right? Like that's how we think of defense, fielding percentage and errors. There's a lot of new stuff out there, whether it's metrics or just things that can track things. You can look at who gets better jumps, who gets quicker jumps, all those kinds of things. We can also see where people are positioned. You can see that this outfielder starts 20 feet deeper than this outfielder. And that might be team by team, matchup by matchup, stadium by stadium, whatever it is. But to sit there, like to have that and allow batting average on balls in play of 354, and there were plenty of times I saw stuff in the game, and it was so noticeable because they seem to be having a little bit on the offensive side too, same kind of thing, where there was a couple games against the Cubs, I remember, where Pete Crow Armstrong went and got a ball and we know he's a great defensive center fielder. He went and got a ball and like just got there. Great play. But it's also a play like a major leaguer can make. It wasn't hit he didn't crash into the wall. He didn't make the play in the infield. Like it was a ball out in the air, wasn't hit crazy hard, and you had time to go get it. And he did. He went and got it. Same game, there was a ball that landed a step away from Justin Crawford that was hit similarly. And it, to me, like that juxtaposition in the same game was so startling that like, hey, there are similar balls hit that the Phillies, when they hit them, the other team catches them. And when the other team hits them, we don't get it. And there's a lot of things like going to slugging like that, right? You could have a softly hit ball, it turns into a double. Your slugging gets jacked up because you got to second base. It's not because you bounced one off the wall or hit one in the stands. You hit one that just the outfielder didn't go catch, And that stuff adds up quickly in these games, especially when you're not scoring runs. So let me try and narrow this down. Before the change, pitching last by a mile in batting average balls in play. So I said it was 354. Now it's down to 294 since then. The league average is 286. So they're right around league average, and they've dropped that 60 points. That's more normal, right? If they're league average or if they're worse than league average, 350 is crazy. Batting, it wasn't as big of a thing, but beforehand, their batting average on balls in play offensively was only 256. So 100-point difference between what the pitchers are allowing and the hitters are getting. Like, their hitters collectively aren't that bad. Their pitchers collectively aren't that bad. There's going to be some regression there. They were 29th in the majors. They've jumped almost 20 points since then. They're still 24th, but even that, like you're going to find some balls are going to find holes, land in front of outfielders, and just get over somebody's head a little more often and a little less often when we're on the mound and out in the field. Some of that has had a lot to do with it. And so I'm not saying that, hey, it's kind of luck that those balls are falling in now. I'm saying beforehand, yeah, they were playing good teams and things weren't going well. There was a huge collection of things not going well for them that I thought was going to change even with the same players.
Yeah, like you said, I think that Crawford with more reps is just going to get better out there. I think Stott uncharacteristically was allowing a lot of balls to fall in. I saw an interesting spray chart, and I feel bad. I don't remember who posted it, but I haven't been able to find it since. But it was the hits that Phillies outfielders have allowed. And it was like very shallow in the outfield and very deep, like off the wall or home run. So like they're either, whether it was the way that they were set up or what have you, but I think that you hope that that's something that's going to change. And one thing that Don Mattingly said that he was going to do is have regular meetings, whether it's once or twice a month, where the team gets together and looks at trends like that. And what can we do to improve those things? So I think that with reps for some of the guys like Crawford being less experienced and Garcia getting used to Philly, more consistency with Marsh playing every day at this point in left field, I think you're going to see some of those things start to improve. And it also helps that you replaced Taijuan Walker with Zack Wheeler in the rotation. I think that's the thing that stands out the most to me. You have Zack Wheeler pitching like he never missed a beat versus a guy who got cut because he was pitching so poorly, right? So that and a healthy bullpen will take you a long way when you're built around those two things.
Yeah, Wheeler debuted the weekend before they made the change. That was his first start. They were 1-4 in Walker starts. They're 7-1 in Wheeler starts. Like even just that's some simple math. That's not even stats. That's just, hey, when you have this guy pitching, and we know Wheeler's not the number 5 starter, but if you look at the collection, there was 5 guys. Wheeler came, he replaces Walker in the rotation. So you replace what you're getting when that guy's on the mound, and then you come in with even Zack Wheeler, who's trying to figure out, his new approach. He's obviously doing it well, but those numbers are extreme. But I mean, it matched what we were watching with Walker. So yeah, you may even just an easy switch like that gives you a couple games right there. Yeah,
and again, when you're pitching to a 2.31 ERA and not missing a beat and going 6-7 innings every time, that'll take you pretty far. When you had a guy who, last time we spoke, we said there's not even a place for him in the bullpen. It turns out we were right. They agreed. So,
and then some small things. Another thing. I mean, this is almost too obvious, and not that you can count on this. But Sanchez was good before that, but he made one start after the change, and then his second start afterwards, he started that scoreless streak. So he made one start at the end of April and then didn't allow a run in May. Like, that helps too. And some of that's just timing, right? He wasn't saving it, and it's not like he can't pitch well against those good teams. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, hey man, you start getting ramped up and things are starting to work, and he's been throwing some pitches, mixing up his pitch arsenal a little bit differently and improving his changeup. Like, he looks so good. And when you go out there and don't allow a run for a month, that really helps your batted ball luck on both sides.
I love seeing all the people who aren't Philly focused, all the sports pods that pods or accounts that I follow are during that streak were like, is this the biggest ripoff trade of all time when the Phillies traded Meade for Sanchez?
Yeah.
Oh man. But
I had to look that up. I was talking to Scott about it, and I didn't remember where they got Sanchez. I had to go into his transaction log, and I was like, I don't remember Curtis Meade. They traded a guy named Curtis Meade for him.
I don't even remember this guy.
Yeah, and then Duran, and let me get this, and then set you up with something. So he's been awesome since coming off he missed almost all of April. He came back on May 5th. His first game, he went into a 9-0 game. I kind of scratched that. He allowed a run. 13 appearances since then. 1.69 ERA is not right. I wrote that down, but his ERA is much. Maybe it was 0.69. Sorry, doing live lookup, live research on the fly. But since his first game back, he allowed a run in a 9-0 game where he's just getting his feet wet. 13 appearances, 0.69 ERA, 23 strikeouts and 2 walks. Now we know your closer is usually coming into a game that you're about to win, unless he changes the math on that. But to have that guy at the back end doing that, and everyone shuffles up a spot, like a lot of things have come together nicely for them. So I don't want to be entirely skeptical, but Wheeler back, Sanchez being awesome, Duran back in, settling down and being this good. Those are really nice. Those are really nice things to have as you're trying to get out of a hole. And before I set you up, I feel like I talked a lot about BABIP. Did it make sense what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do I need to lay it out? Because I feel like I don't like to ramble, especially when I'm talking about stats, but I feel like I rambled about BABIP. I mean, the basic part is almost everything they were allowing was falling in for a hit. That's not happening anymore. When you go from worst it could possibly be to league average, huge improvement. And not as big a change on the offensive side, but 29th in the majors and up a couple spots. Like, those things start to even out a little bit. I think that's more about true performance of the players involved. And yeah, I mean, those pitching numbers are just completely, that's just not, I don't even want to say unsustainable. It's just not, there's no way that's going to last for that long. So, but yeah, Duran's been awesome since coming back. And I want to ask you about the awesome bullpen piece you wrote. You got to sit down and talk to Caleb Cotham, and I don't think you need to be a genius to look at Jhoan Duran pitch and say, man, we should try and get guys like that. But it was really interesting for anybody that didn't read it, and shout out, where people can find it and stuff. But I want you to talk about some of the stuff whether it was, a thing you really liked that was in the article, or something that just came from the conversation that maybe wasn't included. Like, what really stood out to you talking to Cotham about how they built the bullpen and what you've seen from the bullpen so far?
Yeah, thank you for teeing me up. It was a great conversation. You can find it at metrophiladelphia.com or phillysportsnetwork.com. We'll redirect you there. But that's where I write and report on the Phillies for Metro and Philly Sports Network. It was a nice conversation. It really kind of gave some behind-the-scenes looks into what their vision for the bullpen was. I think that a lot of people have felt over the last few seasons like it was a Band-Aid approach. Sign a guy on a 1-year deal and figure it out. But kind of talking to Caleb, they were looking for that guy at the back end who could just solidify everything else and let everything fall into place, and they got it last year in Duran. But it goes beyond that. They want people who are comfortable pitching in uncomfortable situations. Tight games, you have to be pitching out of the bullpen, but not everybody is. They want guys who are like, can you get a big out in a big situation? And can you force a guy to put the ball on the ground? It's even with the questions around the defense, it's kind of silly. But one of the funny things that he said to me was, well, a strikeout's never a home run and a ground ball's never a home run. So you want to focus on those two things, right? Can you get a big out in a big moment, and can you force a guy to hit it on the ground? And then it's from there, it's what kind of fly balls do you give up? Because fly balls can fall for hits. So are we hitting pop-ups or are we hitting line drives? And a key thing for them was getting different looks, right? Obviously, Duran is a unicorn. There's nobody like him out there. Nobody else is throwing 97-mile-an-hour splitters. So it just doesn't happen, right? But you see it when guys like Kyle Backus and Tim Mazur are throwing from odd angles, and Zach Pop, who I believe actually just elected free agency, but he had a really good stretch there with the Phillies. Kyle Backus looks good. Jonathan Bolin is finally back to being healthy and looking as good as he did for Kansas City last season. Brad Keller has not even pitched as good as he can. The big thing coming in was how good his fastball was last year. And Caleb even told me, he's like, he's been bit on the fastball a little bit, but we're figuring out what else to use to get people out. So when you have big arsenals, it allows you to get some flexibility. And they liked guys who were headstrong, but had experience starting like Bolin and Keller to help kind of battle through what can be struggles at times. If you only have 2 pitches and one of them's not working, how can you be really effective when you have a guy like Keller and Bolin who have 5-pitch arsenals each? Hey, the fastball isn't working right now. We'll work on that on the side. And in the meantime, we know that we can get outs with these other pitches. So I thought that was a really interesting take. I was worried that, or I guess the way I asked the question was, are you worried that starter turned reliever, how long that's going to last? It doesn't always work out. Because guys are ready to get back to starting eventually, and their head might be somewhere else. And he said, no, these are 2 guys that like we wanted them because of what they've done in the past, and they've gone through struggles and at the major league level and have kind of matured at this level already. So he also threw Kirkring into the mix there. He said, this is a guy who had a pretty awful moment to end last season, and he got right to work. He's like, so when you have a guy like that who is great at learning. He is a sponge and just wants to get better, wants to add a new pitch, wants to add a new thought while he's getting ready. So they really like the group out there. And now that it's fully healthy, and Kirkring told me, he's like, when you have a guy like Duran at the end, it just makes life so much easier. He's like, what pockets you're gonna attack early in the game, and that if we're winning, the 9th is his. He's like, we don't even have to worry about it. So
yeah, we talked about that last year or in the offseason too, about how they did a really good job with the way Thompson moves people in and out. Like, they made it look easy, and I don't know, sometimes I think they overcomplicate that, but we know that guys like to know their role and be slotted in, and I think they should be given more credit for making it work so well over those couple of years.
Yeah.
But I thought there was potential for improvement, just trickle down from that, and not just like, hey, obviously Duran being there and like trickling up the roster, like each role, but even individual guys, whatever role they're in, just knowing they're going to be there and just pitching better. And that's something that's hard to quantify, but to hear guys talk about it is cool. The one thing I really like too, that you mentioned, it was, I think, one of my favorite parts of the article was him talking about, it sounds so simple and like, well, it is simple, but it's not him talking down to you like, hey, guy who you're not in the major leagues and you wouldn't understand this. It really, like, there's so much stuff out there. Sometimes you do have to simplify things. And he just said the reason we could talk about ground ball rates and percentiles and all these things, right? All the stuff I have, batting average on balls in play and all this stuff. But like, sometimes it is as simple as like, why are ground balls and strikeouts important? Because they don't turn into home runs. Like,
right.
Cannot be. A ground ball really usually can't be. And that's why we value those things so highly, not because we're trying to build some analytically driven, monster of a roster, whatever, and follow Moneyball and do all these things and my Ivy League degree and all this stuff where these guys are coming from. It's a good reminder that sometimes it's just, hey man, home runs hurt you. Like we love hitting home runs on offense. And, our offense is riding the home run sometimes when we're not hitting and Schwarber is doing what he's doing. And for him to just kind of look at it and remind you that, hey, this is why we value this stuff. And you can find guys that keep that from happening. Hooray. And they're doing it. And I thought that was really cool because it was explained so simply and easy.
Just to put it in perspective, here's some of the guys who are no longer with the club. Their ERAs while the bullpen wasn't fully healthy. Seth Johnson, 7.36 ERA in 3 appearances. We talked about Taijuan Walker. His ERA was north of 6 as well. Even with Alvarado and Banks struggling a little bit to start the year, their ERAs aren't great, which makes the group look a little bit worse. But Kyle Backus, who's been in and out, 4.15. And then even like Zach Pop, they activated him and sent and optioned him to AAA because everybody's been pitching so well. He had a 3.38, and that's like one of the worst ERAs in the bullpen, especially since the turn of the calendar to May. So you're talking about a group that is really deep, and when they're all pitching well, it's really impressive. Like I said, Keller, even though he has struggled as of late, has a 3.58 ERA. His fastball is getting hit hard, but he's so diverse in his pitch selection and his repertoire that he's able to battle through that with ease. So it goes to show how important this was for them. They have the most one-run wins in all of baseball, and they had not had a game where they won by more than a save situation, 3 runs or less, in over 3 weeks, and they're 10-5 in that period. So it's pretty impressive to see what you can do when everybody's on the same page and when a vision of what that bullpen was supposed to be, which we laid out in that article from the conversation with Caleb Cotham. When the vision is seen on the field, you can really see what their goal was, and to see it come to fruition is nice.
Yeah. Well, great article. It must have been fun to talk about too. All right, so not to throw like a surprise out there, but like I think we can later on. I think we'll break down more, especially as the season goes a little longer and guys start to get into more of a groove, like what we think they need to do. But I mean, I talked about some of the things that I think are kind of sustainable based on what they were before. But like, I mean, any issues you're still not loving? Because like I think I mentioned it, only 3 guys above 300. I mean, I don't know that there's an easy fix. We've talked about that with a lot of stuff too. How we in our offseason preview, like there's not guys who are up next either as major league reserves or sitting in AAA who seem like to be the guys if there's an opportunity. We're gonna have to be patient with the guys the guys who we think are gonna be in these spots are going to be in these spots for a while. So Andrew Painter, numbers aren't great lately. He's gonna keep getting starts for the foreseeable future. But this is the one I don't know like what the obvious answer is, but Trey Turner, where he's batting in the lineup with a 280 on base percentage. He's not in the leadoff spot anymore, but he's batting right in front of their most dangerous hitter. And that's not usually how you want to put a lineup together. And of course, the easy answer would be, well, then move Turner somewhere else. But the real issue is he's one of their better options, and he's not doing it. There aren't many options other than him unless you want to just run Schwarber, Marsh, and Harper 1, 2, 3 every game. So that's the thing. I don't know how they fix that. And, we can get into like real deep dives on what we think about these things, maybe another episode. But like right now, that's the thing that stands out to me is Trey Turner, especially Trey Turner being at the top of the lineup and how that's affecting everything else.
Yeah, I mean, for them to have success, regardless of other moves made, he needs to get going. That's just plain and simple. Whether it's batting first, second, fifth, sixth, he needs to get going because there is a stark difference in the way that this offense looks. And he is a huge part of that. Top 5 MVP finish last season to one of the worst starts. I mean, might be the worst start. I haven't looked at the numbers closely, but might be the worst start since he's joined, and he had a pretty rough start to his Phillies tenure. They have the biggest issue is they need somebody to hit, whether it's a inside source or an outside source. They need someone else to hit besides those three lefties in Schwarber, Harper, and Marsh. They have three guys who are in the top 25, Harper being the lowest of the three at 21 in OPS. The next highest is Bryson Stott at 132 in the majors in OPS with a 642 OPS. Bohm's 640 OPS is the highest it's been in a very long time. It's and again, how bad Alec Bohm was to start the year. His OPS is higher than Trey Turner's, who is hitting 1 or 2 in the lineup all season long. It's you don't. I think sometimes we overthink the bunching lefties together, but it almost feels like the order should be Brandon Marsh, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper right now, just to get all three guys going, because who knows what's going to happen with the other guys. I don't think that they would do that, but some guys have started to lighten it up a little bit. Garcia looks a little bit better. Bohm looks a little bit better. I think that if I were to sort for just over the last 2 weeks, I'd probably be looking at a lot different. Looking at their numbers a lot differently. But something's got to give, and I think that the biggest need for the team is somebody needs to hit. Somebody from the right side needs to hit, and whether that comes from one of the guys already on the roster or an external source, it needs to change. It needs to change quickly for them to sustain any sort of winning way, because again, the starting pitching, for how great it is, it's unreasonable to expect it to sustain at this level all season long. I think even Don Mattingly said, like, we still got to score runs. This was during the streak, but he said Sanchez going to give up a run eventually. Like, that's going to happen. So we got to make sure that we hit the ball too. When everybody else wanted to wax poetic about Sanchez, his focus was, we're not doing enough across the board, and we really need to.
Here's one for you. We can call it, I'll say a fun one, but I don't know how fun it's going to be when you hear it. The Phillies have the major league home run leader and the major league batting leader. Where do you think they rank in runs per game?
I'm going to go with bottom 5 in runs per game.
Yes, they are tied for 25th. There are only 4 teams scoring fewer runs per game than the Phillies, who have on their roster Brandon Marsh, who leads the major leagues in hitting, and Kyle Schwarber, who leads the major leagues in home runs. That's a problem. That's a real – and I'm not saying anything that people don't understand, and especially people in the front office. Like, I know everybody knows it. It's plainly obvious, but this is not one of those things that I think is just going to correct itself by giving it time. Like, will Trey Turner have a 280 on base percentage all season? I hope not.
Right.
We know that the crazy starts, we said it at the time. I mean, Bohm and Stott had OPS pluses like under 50, and that's not going to last. But I don't know, man. I just, Garcia's been hitting the ball harder. He homered a couple straight games. Like, we're seeing some of the results there. Like, some of those hard hit ball numbers were there when things weren't falling in, and that's into some of that bad ball luck. But like, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of, I don't think you can look at one guy or one part of the lineup or one whatever that stands out as this is so obviously going to change. Some of these guys seem like they're getting the results they should be getting right now. And what worries me is, unless somebody, I don't know, takes a couple of days off, does something in their swing, whatever it is, we know those things are possible. These are long seasons, but I don't see the obvious improvement like within right now. So that's what worries me. And, maybe once we get a little bit farther and maybe a little closer to the All-Star break, we'll start talking about what we think are possible moves, whether it's, like you said, internal or from outside the organization.
Right. Yeah. I think that we talked about it in our preview. I think that if Aiden Miller wasn't going through what he's going through, and turns out he's getting he had a procedure done last week on his back. That's how bad his back issue was. So he's not going to resume baseball activities for another 6 to 8 weeks. But if he had been playing like he did at the end of last season, I think you probably see him at the major league level already, because the 2 potential guys he could have replaced got off to such rough starts. Something had to give. And when we've seen an increase in the amount that Edmundo Sosa has been used because of it. I think that spot may have just been handed to, instead of rotating through Stubbs as a third catcher and Otto Kemp and Felix Reyes, you may have just seen Aiden Miller come up and let him run. But yeah, it's right now. There's no obvious replacement or obvious spark internally. It has to come from And, you hate to put it on one guy, but it has to come from the guy who's making all that money, right? It has to come from the 9-figure guy who's your starting shortstop.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's funny to get off to the start that he has, and obviously it doesn't seem great. But one thing that I had the pleasure of talking to Marsh as well the other day, prior to the game, and I asked him when the team goes through a collective struggle like this, is there more collaborative work? Is there more picking each other up, having side conversations away from the coaches? Kind of what is the deal? And he said, as hitters, we're always speaking to each other. He said, I think we're always picking each other's brains, especially when we're doing bad. But he obviously mentioned Schwarber and Harper as the guys he goes to as another lefty. But he said, I really talked to Trey a lot because his IQ for the game is so high and the way he thinks in the box is so impressive. So I like to take some of that from him. He's like, and there's a reason he's played so long and why he's getting paid like he is, because he's a hell of a player. He's like, and I like to pick guys' brains who think a little bit differently than me. And sometimes it does look like he's overthinking in there. And I'm not taking Marsh's comment as a way to shoot down anything that Trey is doing, but it's interesting to hear somebody who is playing his best baseball give credit to the guy who's probably playing his worst baseball as just a guy who gets it in the box. And I'm trying to phrase that in a way to give you confidence that if there's a guy who's going to turn around a slow start, it's going to be the guy who thinks a little different in the box, who is respected for a high IQ in the box by his teammates, and finished 5th in MVP voting a season ago.
Yeah. All right. Well, you mentioned it before. Last week was June 1st, and I think everybody in Philadelphia, June 1st sounded like a holiday of some kind, right?
Yeah, the arrival of June Schwarber, right, of course.
But if last week was June 1st, that means A.J. Brown was traded, and it turns out on June 1st, A.J. Brown was indeed traded to the Patriots. They got a first-round pick in 2028, and they got a fifth-round pick next year. We know why they did it. Maybe you can explain it because you know it better than I do, why it was important to do it after June 1st. But I think there's still a decent amount to talk about because even though we knew it was coming, I mean, you know me, I try not to get too high or low on this stuff, so it didn't really faze me that day that it happened because it seemed like we were waiting for that day for it to happen. So it happened. It's now official. We can kind of break it down, but there's still a lot to unpack, I think. So remind me and other people why it was important for them to wait till June 1st.
Yeah, so if they were to trade him before June 1st, his dead cap for this coming season would have been just over $40 million. Instead, his dead cap number increased slightly to $43 million overall, but split over 2 seasons. So I think this year it's just under 20. Next year it's just over 20, or it might be like 20 something and 22 something next year. But it essentially cut the dead cap number in half for a guy that you were likely going to trade, and obviously going to trade regardless, right? It's especially when a deal happens the day of that changing, and it's because of a new fiscal year for the league. So because that changed, he went from a $40+ million cap hit to for just this year, plus more next year, to now splitting that 43 over 2, which is why June 1st was such an important day.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what's your reaction to it? We talked about it a bit. I know you were saying even in the offseason you were expecting that it would happen in June 1st. Like that was your prediction just because of the things we were hearing and the assumption that it seemed like Brown was ready to move and was probably making that known. So, for me, it didn't change a lot because I was expecting it. But what were your thoughts when June 1st got here and we got the notification that said what we all expected?
Yeah, as a reporter, you went, great. Now all we have to do is talk about what the team is going to do without him instead of what's going to happen, because it's happened. And I understand that there's a lot of time to fill on sports talk radio, and here we are filling a lot of time with it as well. But there was a point. Well, yeah, we took a month off.
Yeah,
it had nothing to do with the baby. It had everything to do with not wanting to talk about A.J. Brown all that much. But it was kind of like okay, fine, let's all move on now, right? But I think we all get into this business on some level because we were fans once or still are, and the fan in me is like, there was something like, even though I knew 99.9% chance it was going to happen on June 1st, I was like, can they figure it out? Can they have some elite wide receiver core for another year? And is he going to look at Mekhi Lemon and be like, don't worry, weird guy who slithers in his interviews, I'm going to take you under my wing and we're going to figure this out together. But it didn't happen that way, and that's okay. I think that it's a weird thing to be frustrated on the way that things went, although it could have gone a lot worse. He could have made a big public show of it. He could have been doing setups in his driveway, but he kind of kept everything to himself and kept it behind closed doors. And you hear reporting that he requested trades 3 or 4 different times last season, but we didn't hear that in season at all. I think that's something that he wanted to do. He didn't want to be an off-field distraction, even though reporters are going to dig and they're going to make it an off-field distraction regardless. But I don't want to get into the why he wanted to leave. I don't think we'll ever really know. Maybe it's he is that much of a Patriots fan. Maybe it's he won a championship, and multiple championships matters a little less to wide receivers than it does maybe some other positions. So he got a championship and now he wants to get personal accolades, and he wasn't getting them to the level that he thought he could here. I don't know. But it's tough to watch a guy who's not yet 30, who is statistically maybe the greatest, at least over a 4-year stretch, he is the greatest wide receiver I've ever seen, and maybe the franchise has ever seen. And to know that he still has years left to give, even if it's not at the same level, it's tough to watch him go do that somewhere else. So as the little bit of fan that I have in there still pulled on the heartstrings a little bit, like, damn, I'm going to watch this guy go do this for the Patriots instead of in an Eagles uniform. But at the end of the day, you traded a 1st-round pick and a 3rd-round pick to get him, got 4 years of elite production, got a Super Bowl, and got a 1st-round pick back for him. You can't really be too upset about how his tenure went here in Philadelphia. So I'll wave him a nice goodbye, and not in the aggressive way, but like, don't let the door hit you, man. Good luck up there, and hopefully we never see you. That's except for that joint practice in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not rooting for him, and not because I dislike him or anything.
Right.
It's not one of those, like, to me, it's not like some kind of feel-good story and he's finally getting some chance to do the things he always wanted. Like, I think there's an argument to be made that even though he wasn't as out as, we've seen other players and especially wide receivers be when they want to make a change, I still think that his performance it may have dragged down another potential we're in a Super Bowl window right now. And I'm not trying to complain about making it twice in 4 years and winning one of them, but they were the defending Super Bowl champs, and his unhappiness and his level of effort and play on the field may have dragged this team down a little bit, and that stinks. And so that's all that had already happened and things. I'm not saying it's not important, but my thing the whole time has been, we expect this is going to happen. Let's make sure that there's a plan in place. I say let's make sure, like we're going to go to some meeting or something. But it sure seems like there was a plan in place. It was playing out exactly that way. And to me, I think the important thing is, did they have the right plan in place? And then also, it's still important to point out that they are going to be missing and trying to replace a really productive piece of their offense as we go into another year with another new offensive coordinator, with the quarterback having to make more changes and figure new things out, and other coaching changes, the move from Stoutland, and all these different things that are happening. Like, kind of like I was saying about the Phillies with making that bullpen by committee thing look easy. I think these guys have made this look easier than maybe this is for a lot of other groups. And whether that's a credit to Sirianni, specific players, leadership, all of it, I think it can be tough, but they're going to be, because of those changes and, missing your number one target guy on offense. Now, the great thing is they seem to have been preparing for it with other players, and they also, to be able to have a guy in Devontae Smith just sitting there waiting for the opportunity.
Right.
When I looked, Brown was, I think, 10th in the league in target percentage last year, and Smith was 12th. So it's not, and their target percentage was like a percentage point off. So it's not like all of a sudden Devontae Smith is going to be tested in a way he never has been. Now, I can't get into, his targets came when they were bracketing A.J. Brown, or he was the number one or whatever. But we seem to like the guy, or at least the idea of Sean Mannion and what he might bring to the table. And Hurts seems like he's on and ready to improve and ready to prove people wrong. And, all the right things, all the stuff that I think we come to expect from Jalen Hurts. So I think with all the things they've done around it, they might be in a good spot to handle the departure of their number one target. And I'm excited to see the kid they drafted, and we'll see what, the free agent guys can offer. But my big thing now is being prepared. Like I said, being prepared for it, knowing it's going to happen or expecting it to happen. Yeah, I think it's going to be a miss. But what do you think of the trade? Do you think they got enough? Because I know there was a talk about knowing it was June 1st. People talked about leverage. My reaction is they got a first round pick, and I've heard people, complain or question the fact that it was a 2028 pick. I don't know. I think arming a guy like Howie Roseman with more picks, and especially first round picks, I heard people questioning, why do we have to wait so long for the return for a really productive wide receiver in his prime? I get what you're saying, but it doesn't mean that pick won't be packaged and be used next year on a player or a moving up or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think the fact that teams knew they were going to wait until June 1st, so they had time to sign players, draft players, attack the draft, trying to fill holes. I mean, what would have stopped New England with the right receiver sitting there from just picking that guy and not going through with this, right? It's great that the terms were agreed to, but if the Patriots saw a guy like the way the Eagles went up for Mekhi Lemon, if the guy the Patriots loved was sitting there and attainable, they could have just done that and gotten it over with. So people talked about leverage in a couple ways. I think there were a couple things. Obviously, people knew that, or seemed to know that Brown wanted out, or the Eagles were ready to move on, or a combination of both. But having to wait till June 1st and to still be able to get a first round pick, I know there's comparisons to the Jalen Waddle trade and where picks ranked, but I still think, and this is not to just, everything Howie does is the best, but I think for a guy who's a little bit older, and I know there's questions about health. I don't want to get into any of that. I don't know anything about that, but that's brought up. It's been brought up in the past. But for a guy that seemingly every team knew they needed to move or wanted to move, and they wanted to wait until after the offseason was already playing out to still get a first round pick and still be in a good position seemingly in the receiving core, I still take it as a win.
Yeah, I think that if they had done it early and gotten a pick this year, well, it would have been one of the last two picks in the first round. Yep. And you would have had to deal with the cap consequences.
Yeah. And
if you don't have faith in this front office to do something of value with that 2028 pick, whether it's down when that draft actually comes, or to do something with it to improve next year, then you haven't been paying attention, because that's what they do. So like you said, I think just adding a future first rounder to to the pile of toys that Howie gets to play with when building this roster, it's a win. And again, this team, the Patriots, look poised to be a really good team next year. But there's concerns about AJ's knee. What if his knee is fine all season long, and then he has to get off-season surgery and they stink the year after, and now that first round pick looks really good. So a lot can happen in 2 years in the NFL. Rosters change over within a 2 to 3 year window for those, especially if you're not competing every single year. Although the Patriots look like they may start to do that again, but there's a lot of turnover, and who knows what that pick looks like by the time we get there, or the Eagles get there rather. So I think that the return was fine. I think if you look at it on the surface, it does look like, how did the Dolphins get so much for Waddle, and the Eagles didn't get nearly that much for AJ. But I think you look at it just on the AJ end itself, gave up a first for him, got 4 incredible years in a Super Bowl, got a first back for him. I think that you have to look at that as a win, especially when you have a front office that excels at using picks the way that they have.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. It's easy to say, just look at this trade, look at that trade, let's compare who got more, who got less. I try to put myself in that conversation. And if you're an NFL GM talking to another NFL GM, you can't just say, well, this team traded that, and that. You have to trade us that or better. If they don't want to, they could just hang up, right?
Right.
And that's the case with anything. I mean, we know that you kind of set the market, certain things, like set expectations, set a market, set a baseline or a foundation for stuff, and things to work off of. We know what happens with contracts. We know what happens with trades. But there has to be, maybe desperation is strong, but there has to be some desire on both sides for those things to get met. And like, it seems to me that Denver was probably a little more desperate for a receiver, especially at the time they did it. And especially if if Vrabel and the Patriots were willing to, like, they were comfortable with AJ Brown and knew there was a possibility there, and were like, you could kind of zero in on him specifically. I don't know if people in Denver had that kind of familiarity, and you're looking around and like, hey, we need to get a guy soon. There's a couple available, but if we make a move, like, that's how trades end up materializing often. So yeah, I guess we could sit there and say, hey, the Dolphins got more for Waddle than the Eagles got. But I think when you put all those factors together, those are important. And I'm interested. I mean, it's kind of like a fun fantasy game now of like, let's see, you got 2 years. Let's see what Howie is going to do with that draft pick in the next 2 years, whether they use it in 28, package it, whatever. And, even outside of where it might fall for the Patriots, you're right. They had the 31st pick this year. If they're able to keep that success going for a couple of years, especially with, by adding a guy like AJ Brown, if that picks in that part of the draft, it's not just about where it's going to fall based on the Patriots' success. I also think you got to look at the Eagles situation and think there's 2 more full NFL seasons to play before that draft, right?
Right.
I don't know when the first year they can reasonably get out of Jalen Hurts' contract is. And I'm not trying to suggest that they need to get out of it, but Jalen Hurts is going to be 30 years old in the 2028 season. So I don't know. What's the situation there? What do the next 2 years look like for him? We've talked about Lane Johnson potentially retiring for a couple of years, and there's going to be other people to replace and holes to fill. I think that timeline I'm okay with. And what if that picks in the high 20s or the 30s? It's just kind of the way it works. But it's not just, you're only picking a guy in this spot. I mean, AJ Brown was picked 51st. So if you have a pick
right
in 25 to 30 range, I think you can get good players there. So that timeline doesn't bother me. I think with having a little less leverage and getting a first round pick, I think it's a great trade.
Yeah, and it's just another example of a front office that's competent and trusts itself long term. When you have the backing of ownership and the executives have all been here for a long time, you're not worried about your job year to year like some of these clubs. You're like, yeah, okay, let's get it 2028 then. Sure, we're all still going to be here in 2028, so who cares, right? It's nice to have that level of forward thinking from a front office. Not something you always get, and it's just a reminder that we're in a really good period as Eagles fans right now, even if it week to week sometimes it doesn't feel like it. I'll say that I don't think I've ever been more excited for a joint practice before. I normally don't care about those at all, but August 19th and August 20th, I'm not here to report on any of the off the field drama that seems to have been part of Brown's decision to want out, but the players will tell you exactly what you need to know about all of that stuff during those 2 days, I bet you. So, yeah. I heard a great question on the radio, and I don't normally like to give credit to everybody on Philly radio. I love some guys out there, but there was a nice. They said if you could get tickets to one of those 2 joint practices or every preseason game, what are you picking? And it's like, I'm picking the joint practices for sure. I need to be in the stands for those.
We went. Kelly got us tickets through Joe Banner to the last. It was when there was 4 preseason games. We went to the 4th preseason game, and seats that came from Joe Banner. I don't think they were his seats, but they were good seats. And I don't go to football games in seats like that. I don't go to any games in seats like that. Let me just make that clear. But we went and we were trying to be good sports, and I was like, this stinks, and we left. Preseason games I would take absolutely a joint practice like that, something different.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess once we see things starting to play, we get reports on what these guys are doing. But you know me, I'm not going to do a whole lot of summer breakdowns. I mean, we'll do previews and stuff when we get closer. But the trade's done, and they certainly made moves like they knew they were moving on, and that's what I think good organizations do. Now, is every move going to turn into the move they made for A.J. Brown? Probably not. But the Eagles have done a lot of things right, and if Sean Mannion comes in and puts his stamp on this, and Jalen Hurts takes it the way he's taken all these other changes and performs so well, if they put the right system in place with a lot of these guys they have and can stay reasonably healthy, I think there's no reason that. Yeah, I think you don't want to give away guys as talented as A.J. Brown, but they seem to have the right response ready for, hey, A.J. Brown's no longer be a part of this, and I think they did it right.
Yeah, and I think that I kept things pretty positive. But you're right that, like, if it was just like, he just really wants to be a Patriot because that's the team he rooted for growing up, and we're going to figure out a way to get him there, that would feel much weirder than, like, he also, like, messed with the juju and read a book on the sidelines, right? Like, there's weird stuff happened, even if it wasn't the quote unquote typical diva stuff. Like, he still messed with the vibes in there. And I thank you for the Super Bowl runs, and I don't thank you for messing with what could have been another one. So sayonara, dude. And I hope New England stinks next year. That's really, like, that's the only thing you can say at the end of the day as an Eagles fan, right? It's
agreed. Yeah. And we're no one around here is rooting for the Patriots, and I hope they stink. I hope that pick goes to the top of the first round, 2028, right. And I hope that's the Eagles in one way or another. So, yeah, man, definitely rooting against them for more than one reason. So, yeah, good riddance and no luck.
Yeah, no luck and all of the luck to Mekhi Lemon. How about that?
Yep. So, you got any other thoughts on A.J. Brown or anything else?
No, sir. No, sir. I just appreciate getting back on the horse with you here. We already have our next episode scheduled, so we will be out later this week on another one talking some Phillies. And Johnny, what else do we have for the people in the next episode?
So I think we have an awesome one coming later in the week. Everybody in Philly, I'm sure, knows that the World Cup is starting, the men's soccer World Cup, and Team USA's opener is on Friday. They play out in LA, and Philly's going to host quite a few games. The first game in Philly is on Sunday between the Ivory Coast and Ecuador. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in Philly excited, got tickets, going to the games. I didn't think it would be possible, and I didn't know, what my schedule would be like, but I think it would be awesome to be able to go to one of those. And I know Philly's even getting like a round of 16 games. So there's going to be a couple matches over the next few weeks, World Cup matches in Philadelphia and all over the country. I think it's going to be awesome. And you played that ridiculous clip at the beginning. We're going to have actually one of the best researchers of all time and maybe the best soccer researcher ever. Paul Carr is going to join us and talk World Cup and talk Philly soccer and talk Philly sports. He's worked soccer in Philadelphia. He's going to give us some of his thoughts about being there and what the crowds were like and what the response was like. Plus, he's going to enlighten you. I don't want to speak for you, but he's certainly going to enlighten me about the men's national team and their prospects. I know that soccer is getting bigger in this country every year. And of course, I think I don't like to say, I don't like just being a bandwagon fan, but I think, World Cup is an awesome bandwagon experience. So I can't wait to watch these matches and root for the team and root for the U.S. And I can't wait to hear what Paul says about their real chances of advancing and what things look like. So, yeah, one of the actual best researchers of all time, Paul Carr, will be on this podcast later this week. And hopefully we'll all learn something about soccer and the World Cup.
Well, excited to talk to Paul. Love to get some insight from guys who really know their sport. Please don't discredit yourself like that again. Tim Kirchin said it. It has to be true. It's gospel around here.
Tim doesn't lie. Says it.
Right. And there's other people who just like spending time with you too, like Adnan Virk.
You think I want to hang out with, Ron Darling or Sean Casey? No way. I want to hang out with John Fisher.
See, Ron Darling, Sean Casey, no. Adnan Virk wants to hang out with John Fisher. So, we're going to get together. He wants to get together soon.
Let's get together soon.
He wants to get together soon with you. We're
Yep.
going to get together with Paul Carr soon. And
Yeah.
Johnny, me and you got to get together soon. We're always together over text, but we got to get together soon in person. We'll see if we can do it. But if not, in the meantime, the people will be able to hear us get together on the airwaves for them. This has been another edition of the Brotherly Glove podcast. We appreciate you guys listening all the time. Down on the YouTube, we have where you can find us on our socials. If you're listening on audio only, check out the YouTube too. We have some nice fun backdrops. John has an Emmy behind him. I have a book that I helped write. So, just fun stuff. And you get to see two brothers being goofy with each other. Appreciate all the love. Appreciate you guys. Johnny, appreciate you. And we will see you in the next one talking some World Cup with the wonderful Paul Carr.